So welcome to Photographer Academy and Talk Photography. Tonight I'm joined by Kai Wan, who's a hair photographer specialist. Kai, show your webcam. I know I can hear you in the background because we're having a gossip. Hiya, bud.
Hi. Hi.
Thanks so much for joining us live tonight.
Oh, no, you're welcome. It's a privilege to be asked.
Brilliant. I was complimenting you on your glasses, so I'm definitely going to get that contact information before we finish anyway. Kai, before we get to look at the first images tonight and discuss them, can you just kind of let us in a little bit about you and your background and how you got into photography and all the things that go with it?
Well, photography has been a passion of mine since the age of about 12, I think. From as far back as I can remember, I used to draw a lot of images. I'm very creative and artistic in that way. But capturing images was a passion of mine. And I remember asking for a camera for my 12th birthday. And I think I got one of these little Kodak Instamatic things. And I always remember seeing back in the day, there was an advert with David Bailey on it and his Olympus trip. And I wanted one of these. Can you remember that?
I stole my dad's.
I don't know if you're as old as me.
I'm older than you, mate, honestly, yeah. I stole my dad's.
Did you?
I really did, yeah.
Oh, great little cameras.
Amateur photographer, that's all you could see was Olympus trip in amateur photographer. Yeah, but anyway, back to you, sorry.
So yeah, I always wanted to take photos and be creative with a camera. When I was about 15, it came to making choices as to what I was going to do, with the rest of my life and what career I was going to go into. And I was going to go to art college. Maybe do a foundation course. And at the same time that happened, while I was thinking about that, I got a Saturday job in a hair salon, which I absolutely loved as well. Back in the 80s, this was, and it was all about music, fashion. The vibe in the hair salon was amazing, meeting people, and turns out I was quite good at that. And the boss that I was working for said, "Look, if you want it, there's an apprenticeship here for you." And I kind of bit his hand off for it, really. With my first few pay packets, I saved up and I bought a Minolta X300. I loved that little camera. It was amazing. And I took some great photos with it. And I even toyed with taking pictures of hair back then. And I used to mess around with developing as well, like darkroom stuff. I used to like develop the films and that sort of thing. So I got used to a bit of dodging and burning and all that kind of thing in a darkroom. And yeah, so my love of photography really started back then, but my hairdressing career just flew and went from strength to strength. I'm still a hairdresser now. I own 3 hair salons, and I opened my first hair salon back in 2002, and I wanted my own images on my stationery and in my windows. I wanted my own hair work to go in there, and I thought, well, I'm going to be the person to take those shots then. So I started taking my photography side more seriously then. I'd always been involved with photography. I'd always had a camera and it used to go with me everywhere. But this is when I started taking sort of hair photography seriously, when I opened my first salon. And I got myself one of those sets. I think it was a Bowen's like light set. It came with a little soft box. It was a 2-head set, 500. It came with stands. I've still got them. Came with stands and everything. And I got myself some backdrop. I really started like working at that. Some of the team that worked for me wanted to enter some hair competitions as well, and so we got some models in, and we started getting a bit successful with that. I think because we'd set up on a Sunday or a day off and really mess around, and we had the time to sort of kill, messing around with the images and getting the lighting right and things like that. But yeah, that's where my love of photography and hair photography all started.
Wow, I didn't expect that at all. I didn't know anything about your background at all, so that's amazing. So let's stay with your kind of salon and photography for a minute of things, because it must be really great to have young talent who's interested in creative, i.e. hair, and then being able to actually kind of arrange your own shoots, because it's always been a pretty expensive thing to bring a photographer in to shoot hair. And for small little salons, I know there might be, I'd call them 600 clients, and but there's some serious money being made through the salons, but investing into the time, isn't it, really, is the hard part. How much do you push your young team now? Are they still doing the hair competitions and things, really, or is it pretty much led by
Yeah.
you, or what?
Yeah, some of my team are still really into the hair competitions. There's product manufacturers that hold their own competitions. You can enter images into that. And then there's the big ones like the British Hairdressing Awards. And I've shot quite a few collections for the British Hairdressing Awards in the last few months. I've got loads of retouch to catch up on and sort all that out as well. But yeah, so with our team, they're very much into it, and occasionally I'll just say I'll put a date in the diary, say I'm going to set up the studio within the salon, going to have the lights up and everything. Anyone who wants to come and just be creative and shoot their work, then we can do that. Yeah, it's not a problem, and gives a chance for me to do some test stuff with some lighting, and a chance for them to get some work photographed.
Wow. So do you treat them like, I'm trying to find the right words for it now. So do you treat them like a client at that stage, or are you still the boss? So in other words, when you're giving them the brief and you go, okay, let's do, is there guidance still going on, or is it kind of, I don't know how to explain it, because you've got to wear the hat as a photographer in one way, and you're also then a hat as a stylist. And that must be a very frustrating, almost banging heads against wall at time, because you'll have an idea and they'll have an idea, no?
Yeah, there is that. The way that I market myself, so if we go away from just my team now, because I coach them and I mentor them through doing hair for photograph, because it's different to doing hair in a salon for an everyday client. You have to dress the hair in a different way. But I've got that background and that knowledge. So when I go on shoots, so when I'm hired to do a shoot for another company, for example, in their salon or in a studio, first of all, I find out about their brand and what sort of look that they want to achieve in relation to their brand, so that everything sticks on brand for them. So I have to come away from my brand, if you like, so I can understand them. But also I let them know that on my background in hairdressing, I can help you with the hair as well. I know how it will react, in a hot studio, what we can do, what we can't do with hair, how to light it to make certain waves and that appear like more three-dimensional, and add life to the hair. It's all about adding life and airiness and adding some drama to the hair. Yeah.
So if you put your hat on as a stylist for a minute, what's the best tip that you can give to a photographer who's just getting going with a local salon? I mean, when they're just getting going with hair photography rather than getting going in photography, is there a certain kind of position of a light that you would say, look, start there no matter what, or what would you suggest?
I think something that's going to highlight the hair is really important. Quite a lot of the time, I will definitely put some sort of softbox or octabox above the model, and I'll use like an egg crate, for example, so you don't get too much spill everywhere else. So it's just focused down on the hair, so I can see what's going on the top. That might be a fill-in if I don't want to expose this too much, or it might be kind of like a lot brighter because I want to see lots of color around the top. But then I'll have a beauty dish or another octabox that's just filling in the face. You catch lights in your eyes and etc. And then it might have a light behind, or it might not. I might light the background and not light from behind. So it's just having that kind of separating the model and the hair from the background, or kind of blending it in with lighting.
Okay. And if you were kind of giving advice to a young stylist now who's thinking about entering hair competitions, but their boss is, you know, not really involved with that, what's the best route for them to do it? These are
I
questions
think
from me, by the way, not from anybody else yet. We'll get to them later.
I think they've just got to go online, try and, you know, look at some hashtags, hair photographers, that sort of thing. Find out what people are doing, because there'll be some young up and coming people in there they might want test shoots, and, you know, shoot a few images for someone and get involved with hair photography. But yeah, just start searching around and look up those hashtags like hair photographers, hair photography, and then they might find someone in there. And, you know, we are pretty niche in what we do. We're just photographing hair. Well, I call it hair, fashion, and beauty, because it's part of the fashion industry. It's definitely beauty. We're capturing a beautiful face, and but it's really the focus on the hair. And we can range from, you know, £500 for a shoot to, I don't know, I've heard of stories of 25,000, 30,000 for a shoot, you know, so it depends how far you want to take it.
Brilliant. Right, should we get going with the images? I'll just make you the presenter, if you can bear with me for a second. And attendees, and make Kai the presenter. And you should be seeing a box that says show my screen.
Yep.
I can see a screen. I can see lots of.
You can see my screen. And that is, can you see that?
I can see it loud and clear, as it were.
Excellent. I just pulled off your you know, I grabbed that off your Facebook site, so that I've got my opening screen there.
There you go.
So yeah, image number 1. So I think these images kind of that I pulled off 8 images, and they kind of, this one sort of is one of the first images where I thought, do you know what, I think I'm getting there. I think I'm getting there with this. And this must have been, I reckon this is about between 2010 and 2012, I think. And it was shot down in a studio. It was a hair studio, actually, down in London, and it was a collaborative event for the Fellowship for British Hairdressing. We set up a photo hair workshop, so it was kind of showing hairdressers how to do hair for photography, and I was taking the photos, and there was an art director who was like an industry icon, really, that was helping with the styling and all that sort of thing. But we wanted to shoot a collection in black and white, and the clothing was white, and in this case the hair is really light blonde and white as well. So it was capturing that, and, you know, capturing the detail within the image on a white background, which was at the time a bit challenging. So I remember, you know, this model coming to set, and she looked absolutely, you know, gorgeous. Hair was amazing. And I remember having to use some really large black polyboards and bringing them in as tight as I could, both sides, so that I could just suck the light out of the edges, so that you can see it there on the left hand side. It just shows that darkness and throws that shadow in there, and just so it creates a beautiful sort of silhouette with it on that white background, but still everything's very white and pale, you know, in her clothes, and within her hair. Yeah, it's one of my favorite shots, actually, this shot.
If you were doing it again tomorrow, would you change anything?
I don't know if I would. Every time I look at it, I still love it. There's certain things with because I do all my retouch in that now as well. And in the early days of my research, I didn't know how to kind of smooth skin properly and blend skin, and kind of, you see in her in the lingerie there is kind of creased up and things like that. I'd probably take some of that out. I pretty much love everything else about it. I remember, I think there's probably just, yeah, just looking at the catch light in her eyes, because when I'm looking at someone else's photographs, I think, how was that shot? I always look at the catch lights in the eyes and I zoom right in, and quite often you can see what's going on in there in terms of like the lighting setup, what the key light is, and that sort of thing. And I think at this point I was kind of using one large octabox from the front, set slightly above, so we just get that shadowing, and sort of slightly to my right it would be. So we're just like throwing a little bit of shadow through the facial features and just really catching the front of, and throwing a halo, if you like, around the hair, where it highlights the hair around her face. I perhaps would have put another smaller light just throwing up into her legs, you know, around that area. But other than that, I don't know if I'd change anything else. Here we added in some, there was probably, and we do this a lot, probably got a couple of stylists with the hair dryers, just blowing the hair dryers up from the back, just to add some movement into that hair and just blow it up.
Good. First question coming through. Do you tether during your shoots as a rule?
Yes, I didn't used to back in the day, but I do all the time now. I tether completely. So when I'm on set in the studio, a lot of the time I set my studio setup, because I've got a traveling setup, if you like. I can put everything into bags and boxes. I've got a series of kind of Bowens and Elinchrom lights, backdrops, etc. They'll all go back into the back of my 4x4, and I can go and set the studio up. I've set it up in some ridiculously tight spaces, trust me. But yeah, so I can set that all up, and because, you know, I want my client to see what's happening, what the shots are coming up like, and we can also flag up some of the key shots that we like from the day and make selections there and then. Yeah, I will shoot tethered, but I can zoom in, and that's so much better than just looking at the back screen of a camera.
Okay. How important is accurate color when shooting hair? I know this is a black and white image, but I'm sure it's going to come along soon.
Yeah, it's really, really important. Some of the images that I shoot, for example, they might be going into a color category in a big hair competition, or the brand that I'm shooting for, and they want to put pictures in their shop window. They will want the color to be very, very accurate. So I always kind of shoot grey cards and that sort of thing, and make sure I get color balance is perfect.
Okay. Basic kit setup as far as camera, I suppose. Have you got a favorite lens or anything? Or
yeah, so I still use my Canon 5D Mark II, but recently that has the little port where I shoot tethered. It's kind of wobbled free from the inside, and apparently it's part of the main master board in the camera, and they don't make it anymore and they can't repair it, so I can't shoot tethered with that anymore. But that was my go-to camera with my basic kit. And then I have an L series zoom lens. I think it's 24 to 105, something like that. Yeah, f4. So that I use that a lot. And then I've got a Sigma prime lens of 80mm as well, f1.2, I believe that is. So that those two lenses really I use a lot of the time. Because my camera is now, I can't shoot tethered with it. I still use it a lot, but I can't shoot tethered with that now. I've actually been hiring cameras, so I can mess around and try lots of different cameras, and cameras that perhaps I wouldn't normally be able to afford, or you know, don't want to fork out for right now, and actually it works really, really well for me.
It's not uncommon, is it, to rent kit nowadays and things. Really, in the commercial world, it's pretty common. In fact, it's good practice because it's usually get passed over to the client in costs and things. Really. Another question. Oh well, there's another one just popped up. In fact, f-stop for hair. Well, what's your go-to f-stop?
I normally toggle between F8 and F11. Normally gives me like good depth of field. I quite often shoot at 105 mils, so I'm zooming, quite close, close in. So it gives me a really nice depth of field. So anywhere between 80 and 105 on a full frame camera, that is. And so yeah, F8 if I just want to kind of like blur the back of the head out a little bit and blur the background. F11 if I just want a little bit more sharpness around there.
Okay. Are there a question? Are there restrictions in working actually in a salon rather than a studio space?
Restrictions as in
temperature, I suppose, or I don't think they mean a busy salon wise. Do you have any issues in temperature in a hot environment with hair and things, or?
Well, usually if I'm kind of working, if I'm setting up in a salon, whether it's my salon or someone else's salon, the salon will probably be closed to clients for the day. So what you've got is this floor space where you can just move all the chairs down one end, etc. What I love about us working in a salon space when you're doing hair photography is that the hairdressers have got all their products there. They've got wash basins there. There are umpteen plug sockets that you can plug all your lights and everything into, and actually works as a really good environment to set up all your sort of portable studio. It just depends on the size. Some salons are very small, and you have to think creatively about what you're going to do. But I would always make sure, if you've never been to that salon before, ask lots of questions to the salon owner. What sort of floor space have we got? Is it on a busy high street? Do we need to kind of black out the windows a little bit, or that sort of thing? Not for lighting. It's purely people staring in. Sometimes it's a good thing. It's a bit of publicity. People have a look. Oh, that salon's doing, a fashion shoot or something. They must be great. So it just depends on that. But really, what you need to try and find out is floor space, the shape of the salon, and how you're going to set up. If you're using a big sort of 2-meter backdrop, you might not be able to do that in a little small salon. So you need to think about, what background you're going to use, whether it's going to be a collapsible one, a folding collapsible one, or a shorter in length background paper or something like that.
Okay, should we move to the next image? But there's a question about retouching hair for competitions. I'm not sure if you want to handle that now or when we get to the next image, or next image, which I love. By the way, I'm in love with this image.
Yeah.
I know it as well. Is it a famous image, this, Kai?
So this was this appeared in the Practical Photography magazine, one of the last issues, I believe it was,
Okay.
a few years ago. Now that's an interesting story in itself, because I'm a self-taught photographer, and from the age of kind of 16 in the mid-80s, I used to buy Practical Photography religiously, and I would read it cover to cover, and I had a big stack of them. I never threw any of them away, so I could always go back to reference and things like that. And I used to think, wow, imagine one day if I could have my images and have a little feature in Practical Photography. And then fast forward, all these years later, I got to meet one of the girls that was on the editorial team with Practical Photography, and I told her about my photographs and sent her my Instagram, and she said, we need to do a feature on you. And I had about 4 or 5 page spread in Practical Photography, and this was in there, so you might have seen it in there.
Yeah.
There was a full page of this in there.
It's a lovely image anyway. Can we do the retouching part first now, or do you want to do it when we finish this image?
Yeah, we can do that. So the question was retouching hair.
Yeah, is retouching out hair okay in competitions? I think they might
Yeah.
mean the ends or the stray strands and things, really. You know.
So I think um, getting rid of like little flyaway hairs and hairs that are kind of just the little hairs around the edges and that sort of thing is fine. Um, Really, you're not supposed to be kind of taking this bit of hair off there and putting it over to the other side to make it all look symmetrical and really altering the shape of it and so in retouch you're doing something completely different to what was originally shot. That's not really acceptable, although until recently there was no way of they really kind of policing that. um so what they've the bigger hair competitions now, like the British Hairdressing Awards, they've asked for the raw photo, and they've asked for also to submit a 360-degree video of the hair before it was shot, so that they're getting a much truer image of what was done and how much retouch has been added to it.
And is that something that you provide then, or is that somebody else videography wise?
With the
Or they just
video
do it on
side of
their own?
it, yeah, with the video side of it, I will ask if they want me to do that, but quite often they just do it on their phone, and it doesn't have to be anything spectacular, but just some video proof of what they did beforehand, and every step of the way with it. Yeah.
If
In
I
terms
remember
of
right,
my,
a long time ago, they used to actually ask for a Polaroid as well, didn't they? I
they
can't remember
did,
when that
yeah.
was now, or who that
That
was.
was British Hairdressing Awards
It was, yeah.
definitely asked for a Polaroid, which actually probably better even than asking for a RAW, because I don't think they actually specifically ask for the RAW file, which I think it would be better if they ask for the RAW file. They ask for a picture of the RAW file, which kind of it's been processed in itself to make it into like a photograph. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Let's keep that
Whereas a
quiet, shall
Polaroid,
we?
say
Let's
again,
keep that
sorry.
quiet. Let's keep
Yeah,
that quiet.
keep that quiet. Yeah.
Otherwise, photographers throughout the world will be throwing stones at us. Right, let's go on to this image. Tell us about it, because I love it.
So the reason I chose this image because I remember this day completely. It must have been, and I think because you had Jack Eames on here a few weeks ago,
Yeah.
and he was talking about the TG, or yeah, it was the TG Tony and Guy studio on the top of this building down Oxford Street, and I remember it well. It's the studio is in the very top, and there's like glass windows all the way around. And we shot inside on this particular day, and I think it must have been about 35 degrees outside. Everything was melting, including me. Everything was just like I was a sticky mess. And I remember we were trying to get this hair to work, and just stay put. Um, and that's one reason why I just thought of this image, because I just wanted to talk about that. The makeup artist was putting this makeup around her chest and shoulders, and it was just running off her. And I actually said, look, this is going to be amazing. Just like let's add to the running. It's melting down her body. Let's add to that. We had this amazing avant-garde hair that was going on, and we just kind of really molded the shapes a little bit more and made them what I call anti-head shape, with the hair, something that you wouldn't find someone wearing on an everyday hairstyle. And yeah, this model was absolutely beautiful, stunning, like features, jawline, eyes, everything, and we just captured it. The makeup artist managed to somehow the color in the ends of the hair just completely matches what's going on with the makeup on the neck and shoulders. And I just think it's one of those images that everything just came together in that moment, in that heat, and just created something quite special, I think.
Mm. Do you find that the styles are kind of, like the runway fashion, where it's a bit over the top? Do you think that's what you need to provide in the likes of the hairdressing competitions? Has it got to be completely out there? I mean, I used to shoot for the Constantino brothers years ago,
Oh
and
yeah,
that was men's, and that was very clinical in its sharp edge, slick back, black and white. That's how old I am. Uh,
yeah,
but very, very different. But theirs was, when you see the avant-garde kind of exaggerated styles that I see with so many stylists today, compared to that, has a classic haircut still got the same attempt at being amazing in a competition as something more dynamic, do you think?
yes, absolutely. Especially hair competitions. Sometimes that classic haircut styled really beautifully. If you capture that right with the right lighting, the right clothes styling, the right makeup, can look absolutely stunning. So yeah, and the other thing to do is look at the category or the brief for that particular competition. And if it requires something that is to be a little bit more commercial, in essence, is kind of like, yeah, that's where that kind of work will come in. There's usually categories for avant-garde, something that's more creative, and then there'll be other categories that are much more sort of commercially based. So create a commercial wearable look, and that sort of thing. But that said, if it is commercial, I probably wouldn't just do it. I would add a little bit of an edge to it somewhere. So in the terms of kind of like the hairstyling, look at ways in which you can make that kind of classic commercial haircut or whatever just stand out a little, just flicking a little bit here and a little bit there. And then from the photography aspect of it is making sure you kind of light that just to give it a little bit of an edge. So that might be kind of having some harsh kind of downlight, throwing some really contrasty shadow underneath the jawline, like on this image, for example, underneath the nose, and that kind of thing. But yeah, it does absolutely have its place.
Okay. Back to the questions again for a minute. Do you prefer to work with harder light or a softer light?
I think I mess around with both, and I think it's down to the actual shoot I'm doing and the client that I'm shooting for as to what image they are trying to achieve from it. I go through phases of my work. Sometimes I go through a phase of just shooting really hard light. Sometimes, I did a shoot recently where I just used one light with the bog standard reflector that came with it, pointed straight at the model, and it just had this real contrasty light on her. And then other times I just love using like a really big octabox. It's just going to flood it full of the subject full of soft light. I'm kind of on a mission at the moment to try and get that kind of real lovely, almost daylight look from the flash heads. So that's using some really, some nice big kind of octaboxes and that sort of thing, or lots of them kind of positioned around and bounced around off reflectors and things like that.
Okay, cool. We're back to the question. I think it relates back to the salon where we were on about it. So if you're photographing in a salon, do you have problems with the likes of mirrors with flashes being reflected, I suppose?
No, I've never had that problem. No, no, they're not usually pointed in the way of any particular mirrors. Quite often what I'll do is put the backdrop up, the background up in front of where mirrors would be. So any lights that are kind of like then pointing towards my subject, there's a backdrop in the way of it, so there's no mirrors kind of bouncing around off that. So no problems with mirrors in shooting in a salon.
And I'd say
No.
you've always, in a salon, if you're in a salon, there's always a hair cape, isn't there, around the shoulders, and a bit of gaffer tape that you can put over something if it's that annoying. So I wouldn't worry about it that much. As
Yeah.
far as when is the best time to start to approach a local salon to make them think about entering awards and if I could be their photographer? Nice question. Well done.
I don't think any time is a wrong time or any time is a right time. I would just stick your head in through the door and take maybe a little portfolio with you, or get them heading towards your Instagram, and just pop in and introduce yourself. Most people will start shooting for awards the first sort of 3 or 4 months of the year, so maybe autumn time, definitely before the Christmas period. Hairdressers will not want to speak to you in December. They won't have
No.
time. But maybe kind of like late October, early November might be a good time. It is award season at that time, so a lot of the pictures that had been taken earlier on in the year and those that have got through, the award season is usually kind of October, November. So anyone who's successful will start winning awards and that sort of thing, and that's when lots of the winners are released and people are then getting hyped up for the following year. So yeah, actually, yeah, probably autumn time, October, November would be a good.
I'd start to build a relationship in the late summer, in fact.
Yeah.
I think if you can start to build a relationship with a salon or stylist you've never worked with before, and you're trying to put your foot in the door, before you kind of both start to commit a huge amount of chunk of time to it, just really start to develop the relationship, isn't it? And then fingers crossed, you're going to work with creatives in the same way that you're a creative as such, really. Brilliant.
Yeah.
We'll leave a few of the questions there. Anything else about this image that I love?
No, I think we covered everything on there.
Cool.
I
Should
think
we go to the next shot?
Yeah. Right, so this image, this is one of my favorite images. There's something about it I just absolutely love. So this was shot for one of my stylists in the salon. He said, Kai, I really want to enter the British Hairdressing Awards as newcomer of the year. And he was a dynamic young stylist. I say was because he left. He's now in the Navy, but he was a dynamic young stylist, and this was one of the images of the collection. And I just love the kind of tribal notes that it's got in it, with the makeup and everything else. So I wanted to create something. We knew we were going to shoot in black and white, and I wanted the skin to kind of appear dark but have the highlights within it. That was kind of done with lighting and then in post as well, in the retouch. I knew I had to kind of have in this case, it was a softbox pointing down on top of the head because I needed to get that detail in those little knots on the top of the head. So we had a softbox pointed down, directly above the model's head on a boom arm. Like I said earlier, I put the egg crate over the top of that, so there was no spill everywhere else. Grey backdrop, and then just sneaking in from behind over the model's right shoulder, I directed another softbox with an egg crate on it as well there, just to pick up those hairs from behind. There is separating the hair and the subject from that dark background, which just picks up that lovely. And then in the front, I've got a beauty dish, which just picks up the highlights on the cheekbone and the nose, the lips, the collarbone there, for example, and in that beautiful neck piece as well. And because she's got such great features, I mean, their cheekbones are absolutely amazing, and the light really caught that. So with his amazing hair work, we wet the hair down with a water spray. It was all a bit fluffy before that. I said, look, we need to give this a real edge. Let's just wet it down so it just looks, it's got a bit of an edge to it, and it sticks the hair together a little bit. It's a good little trick, just now and again, even with curls that look a bit frizzy, just having a light mist of water spray at hand and just kind of scrunching those in with your hands, and the water in with your hands just binds the hair together a little bit. The makeup here was from a local makeup she does like she's got a makeup place where people can go in and get their bridal makeup and things like that. But she's also a school. She teaches young makeup artists, all for everything from stage makeup to bridal makeup and that sort of thing. But I said, look, you've got a bit of a free rein here. We just want this kind to be really edgy. We gave her a few ideas, and she brought one of her assistants, apprentices with her, and they just had a ball. I think they, just used all sorts of different techniques, and the whole collection is amazing, and the makeup's completely different on all of them, but still got this heavy dark bands things going across the eyes. Yeah, just one of my favorite images.
Is black and white a thing that you can put into the awards, or not really?
Yeah, absolutely, you can. Obviously not if you're shooting a color category, but yeah, it is used a lot, so much so now that actually a color collection or one shot in color really stands out from the crowd, because I would probably say 80% of imagery for, say, like the British Hairdressing Awards is shot in black and white or turned to black and white. There's a lot of black and white shown. I think that there's reasons for that. If you're looking at kind of showing shape and form, then black and white will always show that, because it's, you've just got the different degrees of kind of, you've got the black and the white and different degrees of kind of grey that's within there. And if you're showing a silhouette of a shape, I don't think there's any better way than doing it than in black and white, because color kind of just takes the eye to other places. But yeah, you can absolutely shoot in black and white, and I think that's the reason why it is used a lot. And also it picks up textures really well, with really dark kind of shadows, and then the white kind of highlighty areas. And if you in this image, for example, the texture in those knots and in those braids or around the front of the hair is really picked up in black and white, because your eye isn't drawn to anything else with the color. I don't think this image would be as strong as it is in color, to be honest.
So there was a question earlier on about hair ends and retouching. By putting a backlight onto the hair, does this increase the need for retouching, or is it okay to leave the hair strands?
So here, for example, I did take away a few hair strands, but the ones that are left in there really add to it, because they add to the texture. If you take them all away, so if I'd have gone around that left-hand side of here, around those little knots, and taken all those little hair strands away, I think that would have made it look too clean, where this just adds to the texture of the hair and gives it a much more real feel to it. So I think adding the hair light to the back will definitely expose more strands, so you've got to take that into account when you're photographing it. As much as possible, I mean, I don't want to spend hours at a computer doing retouch, so I will try and get the shot as close, if not pretty much perfect, as I want it to be. I always bear that in mind. Is there any hairs across the face that I'm going to have to spend hours retouching out? Is there loads of hairs, here and there, even with the makeup and things like that? I will want that hair and everything about that shot to be, almost there, without doing too much retouch at all. In fact, the retouch, the main things with my retouch is kind of contrast, either adding contrast or taking contrast away, a little bit of liquefy, so I just elongate the neck, push the shoulders down, maybe pull and push the hair shape a little bit, but nothing that's going to make it look like it was something it wasn't. Yeah, no, so not too much at all.
Great. Shall we move on to the next image?
Yep. So this was something completely different, and I really love this image. it featured in Hairdresser's Journal in a shoot that I did for Weller. The actual shoot itself was shot with studio lights set up, and I think there's another shot coming up in my series from this shoot. But this particular image, the model was just standing there waiting for, she was either waiting for the hairdresser to come and do something to the hair or waiting for the makeup artist or whatever. She was waiting for something, and she was standing up near a window. And I thought, I'm going to zoom in close here and take a shot, because she's got beautiful facial structure, beautiful makeup, everything looks great about it, and I just want to zoom in close. So I took the flash transmitter off so nothing would fire off. Quickly flicked up the ISO to about, I think this one was about 2,500, because we were where we were in the room. Put it to about f4, just so it blurred out. You know, you can see where it's just picked up on that eye is in sharp focus, and then just going back to the ear, it's already blurring out. And just the color and everything of it, I just captured this model, and yeah, it's just a beautiful image that I love. And I think it's just kind of reminded me to say that, you know, when you are on a shoot, just keep your eyes peeled all the time for that moment where a model might not be posing. She might be doing something completely different, but you just might think, actually, that's going to make a really great shot. Just hold everything there. Everyone just stand back. I'm going to capture this right now. And just capturing that moment. And that's what photography is all about, isn't it? So capturing that moment. And at this point, I just got her doing whatever she was doing, thinking about something. And just was, I had the foresight and the ability to just kind of think, you know, let's quickly take that flash transmitter off. Going to get natural daylight flooding into it. Yeah, and I think it was great.
I know this is with daylight. Metering though, do you meter in camera or do you meter with a meter?
I meter with a meter. Yeah. I don't know whether that's kind of old school, but I kind of get a little. I like to have control over what I'm doing with the flash heads. So I will meter each flash head separately for whatever f-stop I'm using, and then I will take a photo with that flash to see what it's doing. Just on a subject, you know, a person, you know, that is around, I'll just put them in front of it and think, you know, is this rear light, is that catching as much as I want it to? And then obviously the key light and that sort of thing, and just have a mess around with them and meter for all those things. With this particular shot, obviously I'd taken everything off. I'd taken the flash transmitter off, and I like to use a spot meter. Even when I'm round and about, you know, if I take my camera on holiday and I'm taking some travel photos and things like that, I use a spot meter a lot, because I just love the fact that you can pinpoint this central little spot where you want to take that meter reading from that particular point. And in this case, I probably pointed it at her cheekbone or something like that, because that is the area that I wanted to capture the perfect light on. And then I will exposure lock that area and then recompose and take the shot. Yeah, but with the studio lights, I will meter with a meter.
Good. Should we move on to the next image?
Yeah. This is one of my very latest images. This is on this month's front cover of Hairdresser's Journal magazine. So I've got another cover, and it's always really, really nice to get not just to see your images in print within a magazine, but when you get that cover shot, that is kind of like the icing on the cake. And as soon as I'd shot this one, I thought, that's a cover image. It is for Weller. This shot was for Weller, a big product manufacturer, and it was a shoot in conjunction with the British Hairdresser of the Year. He was kind of like the art director, if you like. And Weller hold a competition every year called Trend Vision. And there was I think about 4 or 5 winners within certain different categories. And part of their prize was to have this photo shoot with myself and British Hairdresser of the Year. So they were involved on it, and there was a whole team of people, but Weller were also kind of pushing some of their color products and things like that. So with this particular model, we just kept her hair sort of long and straight, which I guess if you're just going to shoot just long and straight and it's just hanging down, it could look a bit kind of average and a bit boring, but we wanted to add some drama and some life into this hair. So using hair dryers, or just using even a magazine where you can use it a bit like a fan and wafting the hair, you know, around from side to side. On this particular shot, we had a hairdryer kind of pointing in from the right hand side, which is pushing the hair over to the left, and then the bottom of the hair, we had another hairdryer pushing that the other way, so it created this really lovely S shape within the hair, and the model's piercing eyes looking directly down the lens. And yeah, I just absolutely love this shot, and you know, the hair color and everything, you know, just everything's perfect about it. And if you look on there, I just wanted to, I think the brief was, you know, to have something that was really commercial, had a soft edge to it, but also was slightly edgy as well. Yeah, so that, I believe we sort of captured that within this. I had a white background, but I deliberately didn't like the background because I didn't want it that ice white kind of feel to it. I just wanted it to look a little bit off-white, if you like. So I didn't like the background. It's just the light that was around that was just throwing added light into that. But if you look at her catch lights in her eyes, there's definitely 3 lights that you can see in there.
There's 5 people on the question panel said there's 3 lights in the eye. Can you explain the setup, please?
Yeah. So I've got a large octabox coming in from the my right hand side, which is highlighting the whole kind of right side as we're looking at the model, the right side there. Because there were some key kind of colors. She's got a coppery color, which is the base color all round, and then this kind of rosy color that was coming in from the front there. And we wanted to make sure that we lit that, and that was caught on the shot. So we've got a large kind of octabox that side, which is throwing that soft light into there. As a fill light, I've got a small soft box down by my knees, which is pointing upwards, and that's the small catch light that you can see in the bottom of the pupil there. And then I've also got a beauty dish, which is coming in from almost above my head, just to kind of like fill in the light and flood it into the face and around the rest of the, but that wasn't the key light. I would say the key light was the larger octabox coming in from the right. On the left hand side, so my left hand side, I've got a large white reflector as well, which is throwing, bouncing a bit more light back into that area so it wasn't too dark.
Question, is there ever a time when you feel the art director has got on a different bus to you? I love how you
got on a different bus.
I love the questions on these sessions. Yes is my answer. Sorry, anyway.
I don't know. I love working what I call quite fluidly. I never stick kind of religiously to one thing, and I think that allows me to be open to ideas on the set as well. I mean, it's so important to go into a shoot knowing what you're going to be doing. So there will be mood boards passed around the whole team. This is the sort of look and feel that we want to do. But if something isn't working, I'm quite open to the art director coming up and saying, you know, let's change this, let's change that, you know, and I make sure I go into it with a view that I might have to change lighting setups around and that sort of thing. But I've never been on the wrong bus. I think I've always been on the right bus. Fortunately, I'm going to touch some wood now somewhere. But yeah, that's yeah.
I think the longer you work in the industries, the more people you meet that perhaps you shouldn't work with ever again. But that's just me. Okay, ignore. I'm not talking about Kai. It's just me. Yeah, just another
I have
lifetime.
worked with I have worked with people that have kind of they've come we've come up with an idea, and there's been some mood boards thrown about, and we go to the shoot and everything, and there's been no rehearsing or preparation from their side, and it's kind of like, I'm just going to wing it today and see what we come up with. And I'm thinking, yeah, that's fine, but we might spend a long time trying to shoot an image and not actually come up with anything, or we might get really lucky. um, so I would say definitely, get your client, if you're shooting for another hair stylist or something like that, make sure that they know what they're doing, or at least got one or two ideas that they know they're going to do with that head of hair. Otherwise, you might be twiddling your thumbs for a long time before you get a model in front of you to shoot.
Hmm. Let's go to the next image. And just before we start to talk about this image, question earlier on was about using colored light within the setup. Is this a no-no or is it okay?
So I've recently bought some more gels. I've tried kind of messing around with them in the past. A lot of my images, either like this one, have got some colors in it that I need to keep in there, and I need to be able to see them clearly, or they're in black and white. Having said that, like I say, I've just got some color gels that I'm messing around with, and you see, yeah, certainly they have been used in hair photography and they do have their place. So I would experiment with that, maybe do a few tests with it. But if you're with someone that wants to, make sure that their color is seen as it should be, then obviously if you're throwing colored light on it, it's going to alter that too much.
Yep. And just staying on that point for a minute, any thoughts on motion blur, or is it better to freeze the hair?
I like freezing the hair, but I've seen people use motion blur as well to really good effect. So that can be used as well. But yeah, I would say experiment with that, test with it. If you're shooting for a client, it's asking them that what they want to see as well. So I have seen it used, and not all over, but in specific little areas and things like that has worked quite well.
Okay. Would you prefer to start with a white, grey, or black background by default?
I think a lot of my image has been shot on a grey background. There's a lot that you can do with a. So my go-to always used to be a light grey background, and on a light grey background, you can make it look almost black. Like this image here, this was shot on a kind of mid-grey background, but pulling your subject away from it, putting your lights closer to your subject so you've not got that spill onto the background, can make it look really dark. But also on a light grey background, you can make it look almost white if you put enough light onto it, or make it look really dark. So you've got different shades of grey that you can work with on that. But yeah, that always used to be my go-to. And if you wanted to, you could always in post add a bit of color or something into that background.
Mm.
So a go-to, if you're going to have one, I would say a nice, mid to light grey background would be a really good starting point, and what you can do with that background. I shoot a lot on white, and I shoot a lot on deeper greys and that sort of thing as well.
Okay. And there's a similar question, really. Is there a preferred color or sometimes imposed background color for hair photography?
A lot of people do use white and different varying degrees of grey, and then either casting shadows on it and that sort of thing. But I've been working with this as well, like more textured backgrounds just recently. Yeah, even kind of old kind of fluffy blankets and things like that, that actually, if you blur them out a tiny bit, you know, hung up on a backdrop, can look really, really good. So just experiment with that as well. And then, you know, if you haven't got a background, having a nice clean white wall, you know, you can't beat that either. So yeah, experiment with that. But I've seen all sorts of backgrounds used. Even, you know, not having a background at all, if you've got, you might be even be on location. And I've shot, you know, in kind of old buildings and things like that before, where you can use features in the background or just blur them out with the right depth of field on your lens. Yeah, but never lose the focus is about the hair or your
Yeah.
subject in it. So yeah.
Speaking about that, talk about this shot with the hair. A great use of color here. Difficult shot to do, or?
So this is actually hot off the press. I've hardly done any retouch to it. It's, in fact, all I've done is maybe a little bit of contrast. I haven't cleaned up the skin on this yet. There's hardly any retouch at all, and I haven't taken any stray hairs out of it at all either. This is literally kind of almost pulled off the raw. And I shot it literally a few weeks ago, but it was something about this that I just love. The whole collection from this collection is going to look amazing. Obviously, we've got some beautiful hair color work in here, and we just shot a whole collection that we just wanted to add some drama, you know, and story tell within the whole thing. With this particular shot, we've got a beauty dish coming in from the front with a grid on it, so we've got no spill going anywhere else. It's just focused in on that central area, and even going out towards the top of the head is going darker. So in this case, I haven't got any light coming into the top of the head. It's just really picking up some facial features, obviously the shoulder, but that area of the hair around her face, and then just a few bits that picking up the hair from that dark background. There may be a reflector or something underneath just to kind of kick a bit of light in from underneath there, but yeah, I think there may be just one, maybe two flash heads on this, because yeah, that hair color I think just looks stunning on there. Yeah, like I say, I've got a couple of the hairstylists blowing the hair with hair dryers, one up from underneath at the front, and then one at the back, just blowing that up and just capturing it. When you're doing that, you do have to take quite a lot of frames before you get the shot that you want, because the hair can just blow completely out the way or across her face and that sort of thing, and you continuously kind of taking a few frames, then brushing it all down, and then counting everyone in again. So on 3, 2, 1, blow it up, and then taking a few more frames until you come with the one. But then when you get the one, it's like, no, that's it, let's stop, move on. So yeah, rather than just continually shooting for the sake of it.
Okay, should we do the next image?
Yeah.
God, I can't remember how many more we got left. Great shots tonight, mate. Well done.
I think there's a couple.
Cool.
Thank you. So remember the shot that I took off the transmitter and took the daylight up near the window? Yeah. So this is an image from that collection that I shot. And again, this was shot for Weller in their studios down in London. They've got a beautiful building there. Again, we had art director, a really big industry icon, and hairdresser of the year at that point as well, and then whole Weller team with us as well. And then in this case, on the big Weller shoots, I have like Weller marketing team and everything. Everything's got to look on brand. The color's got to look great, and all the rest of it. This was the first sort of big shot shoot that I did for Weller, and I really felt the pressure with this one, and the whole team around me was like immense. I did have a bit of imposter syndrome, I have to say, when I was setting up, but I soon got over that. And so I set everything up. I thought, well, I'm going to do my go-to kind of lighting. I know how I'm going to light this. I'm going to, use a key light and fill in here and all the rest of it. And I knew well I wanted to use kind of like these big feature windows that they had on their premises there. So we got a subject to test on when I first set up in the morning. I shot it, and then obviously because of everything, the settings that I'd got, I just lost all the detail from outside because it made it look like nighttime, because we use these flash heads. And as well as that, going back to the question about mirrors flowing, flare coming back off mirrors, obviously I had glass windows there. There was just flare coming off everywhere. I was like, oh no, what are we going to do here? The art director came over and was like, yeah, it looks like nighttime outside. And, we got all this awful flare coming off it. I said, okay, leave it with me. I had to really put my thinking hat on at the time. So I exposed for outside because I wanted to see, that green of that tree, some features that were going on outside, the daylight. So I thought, yeah, we've got to kind of expose for that. We need to be able to see that. And then anything else, we're going to fill in with some light. Fortunately, there is a really big white ceiling, like not too high, not too low. It was just really nice, and I pointed some lights up at the ceiling and just used the downward kind of flood of the lights pointing up at the ceiling to give the main kind of like light coming into this. And then you'll see a catch light in the eye because I was pointing the lights up at the ceiling and it was coming down, flooding the whole scene with this beautiful soft light. There was no catch light in the eyes, which I love to see. So I just put a beauty dish on and just put enough kind of light coming into there so that it just caught that flashlight and filled in a little bit of shadow that was coming down from those the lights coming down off the ceiling. But it was a tricky one to set up at the time, but once I nailed it, we actually got a really, really cool shoot from this.
Next image.
I think this is the last one. Yeah. So this was part of a collection that got into the finals of the British Hairdressing Awards for Northwest or Midlands region, actually, last year. A great salon that I work with. I've done a few shoots for them now, up in the Midlands. And this was one of my favorite images from that shoot. And when we talk about hair photography, I think this just kind of epitomizes hair. It's like the whole frame is almost filled with hair. When she first came to set, it was just long and wavy, just all kind of like hanging down her face and then obviously onto her body and over her shoulders. I said, so we need to add some drama to this shot. How are we going to do it? And I said, just bear with me, but we need to fill this frame with this beautiful hair. So we've just brought everything round to the front. I moved the light slightly higher so that and dimmed down the fill light a little bit from underneath. So what that did was highlight the waves of the hair from the top and added the shadow underneath the wave. So I think you can see that, especially on the right hand side of this image. So like a light coming down from the top, highlighting the almost the crest of the wave, and then taking the fill light away a little bit to just throw that shadow in underneath will really accentuate the texture of those waves. We had some hair dryers kind of throwing the hair up into her face, and that fringe area really kind of blowing that up as well. This was shot on a clean grey background, but I just wanted to add some features into this. So the whole collection, when you see it, it's got different shadows thrown onto the backdrop. This one actually, I think, actually looks like a little bit like angel wings or something around the back there. And what it actually is, I just put a spotlight onto the background, and then in front of that spotlight, I just found various different objects from what was around in the studios that I shot in. And this was, I think, a cheese plant. is a leaf of a cheese plant, and so it just threw this like really weird shadow. I had a spider plant on another one, and for that head of hair, the hair was like kind of straighter and more kind of spiky, and the shadows thrown across the backdrop actually complemented what was going on in the hair. It just kind of happened. It wasn't really set out to be that way, but yeah, it worked really, really well. But everything about this image as well, I usually like eye contact with the model, especially if it's going to be something like a cover shot. But this just works. She's just got something about her, this model. I think her name's Mary. She just kind of looking over to the side like that. She's throwing daggers at someone, and I just love the expression that's caught in her face.
Excellent. Brilliant, mate. I've got a couple of questions to finish off with. Let me just take the screen back a minute. Audience, lost myself. Make presenter. Show my screen. Audience view. There we go. So just a bit of a heads up, everybody. I've kind of put a link in the chat panel for Kai Wan's Instagram. In fact, it's great because you can see the front cover that you're on about as well and things really. So make sure you head over and give a follow with Kai and things really. Some really great images there to actually follow up with, and some really great shots. Let's talk about the last question. So copyright, first of all. Who owns the images? The stylist, you, the client, the salon? So let's take it one at a time. If a stylist is working in the salon and you're commissioned by the salon, who owns the copyright to that image and the use of that image?
So this is always kind of like grey areas that we need to kind of get cleared up when you're actually going to set the shoot up. I think the copyright should always stay with the photographer. The photographer owns the images. And this is something that I was speaking to you beforehand, wasn't it, Mark? About contracts and copyrights and that sort of thing. I think the copyright should stay with the photographer, unless there's a fee or an agreement made where the hairdresser owns that, and I think that should come as at a fee. And then so if you're doing a shoot for a stylist within a salon and the salon owner is paying for that shoot, I think you need to speak to the salon owner as to use of those images and that sort of thing, and who they actually belong to in that case. Yeah, I think there's some there are some areas there that will need discussion before the shoot.
Yeah, I definitely, from my point of view, if you don't mind, I would say that if you've got a junior working in a salon, make sure that the copyright remains within, obviously, photographer, but also the salon. So if the junior leaves, he can't just take the images and use the images through, ignorance is not an excuse for breach of copyright or misuse of images. So you've got to make sure that they're fully aware and things like that. I definitely make sure that. And as far as model releases are concerned, I would make it the responsibility of me to get the model releases signed, even on behalf of the actual salon. I'm sure it's different with Weller and the likes of the big commercial clients, because they're the bookers, they're booking the agencies, they're going to handle all that. So you don't have to worry about those things then. But there might also be restrictions on how you can use images. I think that's the bigger, grayer area at times when you're working for a big company, if you can use the images at all, and how soon you can use those images. Because some of them can be under wraps, for about 8 months, they might be under wraps with a certain campaign within it. How does it work from the hair industry, likes of Weller, not kind of telling everything behind the scenes, as it were, but do you get the chance to use the images yourself? Are they happy with that because they're getting marketing?
Yeah, it's kind of like a unique situation that I'm in with Weller, because I'm also a guest artist as a hairdresser for Weller. So I'm contracted to do work for them and help them, if you like, with marketing, and I'm ambassador for the brand. So it's usually going to be things that I'm putting out there that is going to help promote their brand as well. And if it's photographs that I've shot, they're usually pretty happy with that. If there's anything that I'm kind of not sure about, I will go to whoever it might be I need to get in touch with to ask whether I can use this for that this particular campaign that I'm doing or whatever. But I will definitely wait for the go ahead from them to release anything, because if I release anything too soon and it's blows a big kind of product launch, for example, then they're not going to be very happy with me. So
they'll usually give you a release date anyway, isn't it? Really, or an advised release date, so you can kind of hang on with that.
In that area, definitely, communication is key in that. Yeah, sorry, your microphone went a bit funny on that last bit.
Yeah, sorry about that. So
can you hear me?
I can now. I can. Yeah, you're back. As far as the model and the styling is concerned, as a stylist yourself, do you ever actively get involved with another stylist shoot? I suppose what they're asking, can you split yourself in half, be a photographer and not a stylist?
Yes,
yep.
Absolutely. So if I'm shooting for someone else, and they don't want me to get involved with the hair whatsoever, I will just be there as a photographer. But if I'm shooting, I actually love shooting for up and coming salons or stylists, and helping to get them on the ladder. It might be, for example, it might be the first shoot that they've ever done, or it might be, you know, they've tried other photographers and not really worked out with them. Purely, they might be getting a landscape photographer to shoot hair for them in a studio, you know, and that's not really going to work out, is it? Because, you know, especially if we're kind of like niche, just because they can use the camera doesn't mean say they can shoot everything. I can't shoot. I mean, you know, my landscape photography is probably very mediocre at best. So yeah, I think, you know, whatever you're specializing in, you know, so it might be an up and coming stylist or a salon group, and I will then say to them, look, do you want some help with the hair and direction with that? Because I can be an art director, stroke slight, you know, get involved with the hair and do a bit of hair for you, and then shoot it as well. So I can wear a few different hats on the shoot that I do. Yeah, and I think that puts me in a bit of a unique position, not just a photographer.
So question again, do you shoot video as well or not?
I shoot little bits of video. I've got a little Canon M6, which I love, just really portable, and I will just shoot some video on that. I will shoot some video on my phone, and then just kind of edit that together. I'll also shoot some behind the scenes shots on the M6 and on my phone. There's a site that I use called Pixie Set, so I'll just put everything up on there after, and sometimes I will put it as a fee, sometimes I'll just put it as part of the package that I do, and if they want to select any images of there, they can either buy it or they can have those images from behind the set, and it just adds to, sometimes it's just added value, isn't it? It's just, you know, oh, they're really great behind the scenes images, can we have those as well? Do you know what I mean? And so I'll always keep that to hand as well.
So there was a question about BTS stuff. Do you usually shoot some behind the scenes stuff during a shoot?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, if the makeup artist, clothes stylist, hairdresser comes onto the set in the lights and they're just doing little bits, I will just ask them. We might mock something up, so they might, usually they come in front of me and the in between me and the model, and I can just see the back of the head while they're kind of, you know, tweaking something either with the makeup or the hair. So we'll mock something up and say, look, this is brilliant. Can you just move to the side a little bit and I'll take a shot of you doing that. So there's those kind of behind the scenes stuff, but I will then, if I've got a bit of time where I'm waiting for a model to come to set, I will pick up my phone or the little M6. The M6 is a mirrorless compact system camera, which is great, and I'll just carry that around over my shoulder and go into the preparation area and just take some pictures on that behind the scenes.
Brilliant. They'll bring it to an end, Shui. I came to this image because I love this photograph, but it's also a great one because there is behind the scenes bit of video. So this image on your Instagram, so that's a really great way when you're talking about the setups and everything else with it. If you don't go over to Kai's Instagram for anything else, I would just go and see it for some of the actual setup shots and everything else with it and things really. But
you can see that cheese plant.
It's a good job you didn't say it was a spider plant, wasn't it? Yes. Really great with it. Kai, I'm sure we could go on for hours, mate. Absolutely brilliant. Thanks so much for joining us live tonight. It's so great when we get multi-talented people from around the world to actually come and talk about their kind of niches and specialities. But it's been absolutely a pleasure to speak to you and share some of your images. And thanks for joining us on the CAD Academy. As I said, it'll be live, guys, on YouTube for a rerun in a few weeks' time. So watch out on the Academy YouTube channel. Otherwise, it'll be ready for members from tomorrow afternoon. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night. See you all soon.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kai. Cheers, mate.
Thanks,
Speak to you soon, I hope.